China has refused to meet with our government ministers for 3 years now. But they've made an exception for two notable Australians, mining billionaire Andrew Forrest and Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews. Forrest is the first Australian to meet with China's new Premier, Li Qiang, appointed just this month. He's one of President Xi's key lieutenants. Forrest has used this occasion not to put pressure on China, but instead to urge Australia to clarify our AUKUS deal with America and Britain. The Sydney Morning Herald reports Forrest called on the Australian government to make it clear that the $368 billion AUKUS nuclear submarine deal was to defend our nation only, never to attack another. Forrest also reportedly insisted that China was not a national security threat. He accused politicians and foreign policy analysts of just trying to scare people. He said, "I don't see national security concerns with China." He said its demographics and logistics are too ridiculous to even contemplate. So here's a businessman in Andrew Forrest who has made his money exporting iron ore to China, insisting the nation is not a national security threat. It's absurd. It's wrong. China has been engaging in an alarming build-up in the Indo-Pacific, turning island atolls into airports. Its debt-trap diplomacy has crippled Pacific nations, and it has engaged in a massive military build-up. China has also tried to use coercive tactics against Australia as punishment for laws that protect our sovereignty. But Andrew Forrest praised Premier Li, saying that he's a dynamo, he's an action man. He is most likely the man for our times. He seems to be well chosen. Forrest said his main message to China is to put aside political differences and concentrate on global warming. I mean, this is laughable because Twiggy Forrest made his billions from mining iron ore, not exactly climate change friendly. And secondly, China is building more new coal-fired power stations than anywhere else in the world. Now, Twiggy wasn't allowed to take journalists with him on his trip, and he would have loved them. He would have wanted them there. There's nothing he loves more than publicity. Daniel Andrews wasn't either. This was presumably a prerequisite of Andrews' trip to China. He would have been told he couldn't take any media, and he's clearly agreed to play by the rules of the Chinese Communist Party. Now remember, Andrews was very quick to come out against the neo-Nazis who gatecrashed the women's rally in Melbourne.
That rally was a nasty, hateful event long before anyone offered up the Nazi salute. Right? Be really clear about this. And you might say that the Liberal Party, are increasingly becoming a nasty, hateful little rabble.
It's not hard to come out against neo-Nazis. Who wouldn't? But you know what takes courage? Standing up to the Chinese Communist Party. China's human rights record is among the worst in the world. It disappeared whistleblowers who tried to warn the world about the COVID-19 pandemic, and some of those whistleblowers are still, to this day, missing. China's minority Uyghur population are languishing in concentration camps, and citizens are punished for freedom of speech, just basic human rights. But Andrews said he wouldn't be raising the case of Cheng Lei, the Australian mother and journalist who's been in prison now for 2.5 years. And as we revealed last night on this show, Cheng Lei's partner has written to the Premier's office begging him to intervene, to advocate for her release while he's in China. Nick Coyle told The Age that he and his children, who are Victorians, are disappointed by Andrews. He says supporting two young Victorian children by making careful representations to officials in China for regular contact with their mother and for her to come home in Melbourne as soon as possible seems to me to be an entirely appropriate thing for a Premier to do. Of course it is. It would take real courage to strongly raise her case in China, actual courage. But according to Daniel Andrews, no, this is much too sensitive.
There are a number of people that are in custody. I just want to make it very clear that would not be something that I would raise because they are deeply sensitive matters, and they're best dealt with by the Australian Foreign Service.
This is clearly a sensitive matter. I can understand for the family it's a very sensitive and difficult matter, and it is appropriate that matters of this nature are handled by the Commonwealth Government. I just have nothing further to add to that.
It is a problem, to be fair, that there are no Australian journalists in China.